I was hellbent on marrying a domestic abuser, and everyone thought I was insane. Hilarious, right? Ethan paid me $15,000 a month, and every time he hit me, I got a cool $75,000 bonus. Who's the crazy one here? In this day and age, would anyone really turn down money for the sake of dignity? 75 grand. A few months of this, and I could buy a house. Honestly, I even went to the temple every few days to burn incense and pray. I begged all the gods and goddesses to bless Ethan with the urge to beat me. But I don't know if the deities misheard my prayers or if they were all collectively going through a rebellious phase. Not only did Ethan's domestic violence incidents not increase, but they actually started to decrease. This was unacceptable. When I first married Ethan, he'd hit me 2 or 3 times a month. Now? It had been 3 months since he last laid a hand on me. My monthly income had plummeted from a 6-figure commission to just a base salary. Who could handle that kind of drop? I certainly couldn't. So that evening, I left work early, went home, raided the wine cellar, and cooked a full meal. I was waiting patiently for Ethan to come home from work. My plan was to get him drunk. I'd heard that people easily lose their minds after drinking, leading to domestic violence. Ethan actually came home quite early that day at 8:03 p.m. He was impeccably dressed in a suit, tall and elegant. His features were sharp and handsome, with strong eyebrows and bright eyes. I had to admit, he had a nice physique and a good-looking face. Unfortunately, he was still a bit lacking compared to cold, hard cash. I hurried over and enthusiastically took his arm. "Honey, you must be tired. Go wash your hands and let's eat. I cooked all your favorite dishes." Ethan took off his jacket and held it, glancing at the dining table. The table was overflowing with a rainbow of wine bottles. He paused for a long moment, then turned to me and asked, "Where's the food you cooked?" I walked to the table and pushed aside the layers of bottles, revealing a tiny plate of peanuts. "Here, Ethan." Ethan said drinking was bad for the health and that we shouldn't drink so much at home. But then his phone rang. I was close to him and could faintly hear a woman's voice on the other end. "Ethan, I'm getting married next month. Will you come?" Okay, I had to speak up for Ethan on this one. "Sister, inviting your ex-husband to your second wedding? Are you out of your mind?" I was about to open my mouth and give her a piece of my mind, but Ethan seemed to read my lips. He immediately hung up the phone and made excuses for his first love, his white moonlight. We weren't actually married. We never completed the wedding ceremony, and we weren't legally registered. Fine. It takes 2 to tango. One was willing to hit, and the other was willing to be hit. But I was there at their wedding, so what were they playing at? Did they take me for a fool? Speaking of Ethan and his white moonlight's wedding, it was truly a memorable scene. The bride and groom were already on stage, and the bride's father was about to place her hand in the groom's. Suddenly, the bride took off running. She was muttering, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I've thought about it for a long time. I still can't accept your domestic violence." The audience erupted in an uproar. Ethan stood on the stage, completely bewildered. Because his violent tendencies were real, there was no denying it. Everyone knew about it. Years ago, when he was dating his white moonlight, something happened and he lost control. He crashed his car into a roadside flower bed, got out, and punched his girlfriend, his expression fierce. That scene was captured by a passerby and posted online, causing a significant storm for both him and his company. I was the one who handled the PR. I had just graduated not long before, and dealing with that mess exhausted me. I felt like all my brain cells were used up. But the bride running away was actually understandable. No one wants to marry someone with violent tendencies. I was also at their wedding that day. When she ran off the stage, I seized the opportunity amidst the chaos and pulled the fleeing bride into the dressing room. Can I borrow your wedding dress?" I said as I started unbuttoning it. The white moonlight looked at me, probably thinking I was completely insane. I quickly explained my reasoning. "Look, doesn't your ex-fiancé look like a drowned rat?" The white moonlight recalled Ethan's shocked and saddened expression, and her eyes welled up with pity. I pressed my advantage. "If I don't go to hell, who will? Let me save him for you." She probably still had some love for him. Her eyes flickered, and with a determined bite of her lip, she changed out of the wedding dress and gave it to me. I put on the dress, walked gracefully to the stage, took the microphone from the MC, and smiled broadly. "Ladies and gentlemen, there's no need to panic. This was actually part of our plan. The bride you just saw was an actress we hired. This is my only wedding, and I wanted it to be unique, so we designed this little skit. Half the people below believed it, half didn't. I smiled gently, turning slightly to show everyone my best side. You see, this wedding dress was tailor-made to my figure. I wasn't nervous at all. I did look much better in the dress than the white moonlight. My skin was perfect, fair and rosy, with a waterfall of black, slightly curled hair. My eyes were almond-shaped and expressive, and I had a classic beauty with perfect teeth. Who wouldn't be mesmerized? And I had a great figure. The incredibly tight wedding dress accentuated my curves, making me look absolutely stunning. The guests, hearing my words, gradually snapped out of their shock and looked at me intently. Now everyone believed it. They were probably thinking, what kind of CEO would abandon this goddess for that bean sprout of a white moonlight? The white moonlight, seeing the enlightened looks on everyone's faces, stood halfway out the door, unsure whether to leave or stay, feeling utterly suffocated. She was probably also wondering if Ethan and I had been having an affair all along. After all, my relationship with Ethan was quite suggestive. I was his personal secretary. After the wedding, Ethan asked me, "Why did you help me?" I said dramatically, "For love and peace." Ethan tugged at his tie and gave me a look. Cut the crap. I had already changed out of that suffocating wedding dress. I propped myself up on the table, swinging my legs. For the money. Of course. What else could it be? It's not like I'm secretly in love with you and couldn't bear to see you down and out, right? Ethan thought about it, and it made sense. So he said, "Okay then. Since we've already gone through the wedding ceremony, you can get a fake marriage license with me. I'll pay you $15,000 a month." How much? I almost fell off the table. That was a lot. You see, as Ethan's chief personal secretary, I had worked diligently for 5 years, losing a lot of hair, and my monthly salary was only $3,000. This was 5 times that. $15,000 a month, that's $180,000 a year. In a few years, I could buy a house. Right. I asked Ethan, "Does that include food, lodging, and expenses?" Ethan. After all, as your wife, I can't embarrass you. I need to eat well, drink well, and dress well. All of that is for your image, right? It can't come out of my salary, can it? My salary isn't enough to cover anything, not even a single handbag. Ethan wasn't good at many things, but he was open to suggestion. Hearing this, he took out a supplementary credit card from his wallet and gave it to me. Perfect. I burst into tears and hugged Ethan excitedly. Thank you, boss. You're so handsome. I'll definitely play the role of Mrs. Carter well. Indeed, I knew there had to be shortcuts in life. The ancients had lied to me. As for the $75,000, that was courtesy of the white moonlight. The first $75,000 came in the 3rd month of my marriage to Ethan. That day, I dragged Ethan to a street-side barbecue stall. At first, he was reluctant. He said it was full of greasy smoke, foul language, and a vulgar environment. I turned things upside down, brainwashing him that that was where the real human experience was. Everyone spoke their minds freely, without restraint. The environment might be crude, but the hearts were open and honest. Unlike in those high-rise buildings, where everyone looked polished and refined, but was full of petty calculations, smiling on the surface, but cursing inside. Ethan reluctantly agreed to go with me to eat barbecue and experience the local flavor. And as luck would have it, the white moonlight was forced by her parents to go on a blind date. The guy looked like a piece of black sugarcane, and he was super stingy. On their first meeting, he took the white moonlight to his family's barbecue stall, saying it was best to keep the money in the family. And they were sitting right at the table next to us. The white moonlight had a really good temper. She didn't even curse, but politely told the sugarcane guy, "I don't think we're a good match." The sugarcane guy wasn't happy. "Don't say that. I quite like you. Although you're a bit older than me, you're beautiful. I don't mind." Top-tier understanding. The white moonlight was also done. She didn't even argue, just said, "I mind. I'm afraid people will gossip and say I'm robbing the cradle. The matchmaker didn't tell me you were so much younger than me before." The white moonlight was very apologetic. "I'm sorry, I wasted your time. Sugarcane guy, I really don't mind. Don't be so self-conscious." White moonlight, "I really do mind." Sugarcane guy. The white moonlight stood up to leave. Sugarcane guy, "Wait." White moonlight asked, "Is there anything else?" The sugarcane guy hesitated, very unsure. I get the feeling. It's like you don't like me. I couldn't resist chiming in. Is there any possibility that she just doesn't like you? The sugarcane guy turned and our eyes met. Is that possible? He said, my family owns a barbecue stall. We're very rich. Not just this one, the whole row. And I'm 6 feet tall with 8-pack abs. I'm the type girls like the most. Thanks, I now have a phobia of 6-foot-tall guys with 8-pack abs. The white moonlight saw me, paused, and looked around for Ethan. But she looked around and couldn't find him. Finally, her gaze landed on the person next to me, wearing a pink down jacket, a hat, and most of his face covered. The white moonlight was a little surprised. Ethan. Carter. The pink down jacket was mine. Ethan thought the chair was dirty and insisted on leaving. I was captivated by the smell of barbecue and really didn't want to go. I had no choice but to force him to wear my oversized down jacket, which was several sizes too big and reached my calves. But the white moonlight clearly misunderstood something. She probably thought that for Ethan, a germaphobe, to wear my clothes, I must be special to him. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with the tears of someone who'd been cheated on. She misunderstood, didn't ask, and didn't listen to explanations. She turned and took the sugarcane guy's hand, saying, You really don't mind that I'm 3 years older than you? Sugarcane guy, I don't mind. Then let's give it a try. Snap. I saw the barbecue skewer in Ethan's hand break in two. On the way back, Ethan's mood was already very off. The driver was waiting by the roadside. Seeing him, he immediately approached. Mr. Carter, are we going back now? Ethan didn't speak, pulled open the car door, and sat in the driver's seat. The driver understood. The CEO must want to drive himself today. So he went around to the back seat, ready to get in. But his hand was raised, not yet touching the door, when the car shot off like a rocket. I looked in the rearview mirror at the driver, flustered in the wind, and I was flustered too. If only I hadn't been so quick to get in. This madman was driving so fast. What if I died on the road? I was scared out of my wits, shouting his name nonstop. Ethan, Ethan. He looked straight ahead, his tone calm. It's okay, don't worry. Damn it, your car is practically flying. What is there to not worry about? Ethan didn't reply, but the air was filled with an aura of, it's best if you don't worry, but even if you do, it won't change anything. That was the first time I had seen him so close to losing it. His expression was as cold as ice, the veins on his forehead slightly bulging. After saying, it's okay, don't worry, he ignored everything else I said, remaining silent. I felt like if he kept driving, he would lose control, and my life might end that day. I was so anxious that tears streamed down my face. Finally, in desperation, I leaned over the seat and kissed his lips. I was sitting in the back seat, and it was already difficult to reach the front. I also had to make sure I didn't block his vision while kissing him. This kiss was extremely strenuous. Fortunately, the car stopped. Ethan looked at me, his lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes cold. I huddled in the corner, not daring to speak, waiting for his violence to descend. But he didn't. Perhaps the negative impact of his near assault on the white moonlight on the street had left him with some residual rationality. He silently got out of the car and sat in the back seat. I was so scared I almost jumped out the window, pressing myself against the car door. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, please don't kill me. Ethan still didn't speak. After a moment of silence, he made a phone call and called the driver back. Then he asked me, why did you kiss me? Wasn't it obvious? Of course, it was to save my life. But I couldn't say that at the moment, so I rolled my eyes, tears welling up. Because I love you. Ethan. I cautiously moved closer to him. It's too painful to love her. Stop loving her. Let me love you. He was stunned. He looked at me with a confused expression, probably wondering when I started plotting against him. Just then, the driver returned, got out of the taxi, and got into the driver's seat. Mr. Carter, are we going home? Ethan, yes. I peeked at his expression, trying to gauge how much he believed me. We had been fake married for 3 months, and probably because my actions at the wedding prevented him from becoming a laughingstock, he had always been quite polite to me. We were already very familiar. I became his assistant right after graduation, and in 5 years, I slowly worked my way up to his chief personal assistant. I even knew his underwear size. After the fake marriage, we saw each other not only at work but also after work, and our interactions became increasingly harmonious. We would occasionally bring each other delicious food, share funny stories, and snuggle up on the couch to watch movies, making a mess of the house with popcorn scattered everywhere. Sometimes, it really felt like we were a newlywed couple. So what I said just now was actually quite believable. No one in their prime, constantly facing someone who is both handsome and wealthy, and with whom they can have great conversations, can resist falling for them. So he hesitated. He thought I might actually love him. But he remained silent, making me very unsure. When we got home, I was reluctant to get out of the car, clutching the door. I suddenly remembered I have something to do. You go ahead, I'll be right back. Ethan completely ignored my statement and said, "Get out of the car." Fine. For the $15,000 monthly salary. I'll endure it. I reluctantly followed Ethan. Then to the wine cellar. Then to the dining room. Ethan pushed a bottle of wine towards me. Have a drink? I looked at the approximately 500 milliliters bottle in my hand, my lips twitching involuntarily. You call that a drink? In fact, we didn't know how many bottles we drank that night. As we drank, we somehow ended up in bed. The next morning, I woke up naked in Ethan's bed. I turned my head and saw Ethan, also naked. Damn it. When did I end up in bed with him? I've been alive for 27 years. I've never even had a boyfriend, and my virginity is gone. I racked my brains and finally remembered. Last night, when we were both drunk, the white moonlight, miles away, also got drunk and called Ethan. I don't know what she said. After Ethan hung up the phone, he was completely off again. Rage. Tsunami. Apocalypse. His eyes were stormy. Suddenly, he smashed his phone onto the floor. The piercing sound ripped through the living room, and I was startled, my drunkenness dissipating, leaving me stunned and unsure of what to do. Then, before I could react, he smashed the wine bottle in his hand against the television. The unfinished wine spilled out, splashing everywhere. The television was damaged in one corner, flickering with snow, and the figures on it became unrecognizable. I was sitting near the TV, and some of the wine splashed on me as the bottle flew towards it. It would be a lie to say I wasn't scared. When a person with mania is out of control, they might attack anyone around them indiscriminately. The most rational thing for me to do at that moment was undoubtedly to escape. But I looked at Ethan. He was clenching his fists, his eyes bloodshot. His tall body was suddenly shrouded in a veil of vulnerability. I took deep breaths, trying to calm my fear and regain my composure. Trembling, I approached him, and then, with a surge of courage, I threw myself into his arms. Ethan, please don't be like this, I'm so scared. He was stunned, his body trembling almost imperceptibly. I seized the opportunity to confess my feelings, telling him that there was still someone in the world who loved him, someone who cared about him. After a long time, he finally calmed down, his eyes bloodshot as he looked at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. And then, things suddenly spiraled out of control. He looked at me for a long moment, probably drunk and not thinking clearly, and suddenly pushed me onto the coffee table. I pushed him, trying to resist, but I was afraid of provoking him, so I didn't dare be too forceful. This seemed to him like playing hard to get. The next second, a barrage of kisses rained down on me. There were still many unopened bottles of wine on the table, and they rolled to the floor with his movements, making clinking sounds. He ignored my struggles and pleas, carrying me from the living room to the bedroom. Finally, I fell asleep from exhaustion. After recalling the events of last night, I cried. While crying, I called a lawyer for advice. I remember that forced sexual intercourse within marriage is also considered rape, right? The lawyer confirmed my understanding. I breathed a sigh of relief, grabbed my underwear, ready to get dressed and go to the hospital to collect evidence, and turned to look for a used condom in the trash can, intending to take it with me. As I turned, I saw that Ethan was awake. He saw the bruises all over my body, the fact that I was standing there completely naked. He seemed shocked too. He pressed his temples, let out a long sigh. I'm sorry, He spoke with difficulty. If you want to pursue legal action, I'll cooperate. He sat on the bed, running a hand through his short hair in frustration. He had dark circles under his eyes, a faint stubble on his chin, and there were scratch marks from my fingernails on his arched back. But he was still so handsome. My hand, holding my underwear, paused. Damn it, I was softening. I had actually known Ethan earlier than he thought. About 7 years earlier. I was in my second year of high school. My father was a bus driver, and my mother worked for a renovation company. Life was hard, but the three of us lived together happily. My father's bus route was the same one I took to school, so I would wait for him at the bus stop every day. The bus came every 10 minutes, with a total of 4 buses, making the entire route 40 minutes long. Usually, I would wait for 10 minutes, and my dad's bus would arrive. But that day, I waited for 30 minutes, only to receive news of his accident. The bus driver pulled up to the stop and called me to get on. "Lily, get on. Your dad's been in an accident. I'm going to the hospital. I can give you a ride." I felt like I had been struck by lightning, getting on the bus in a daze. The driver dropped me off at the hospital. He had to continue driving and couldn't go in with me. He just told me to ask the doctors if I couldn't find my way. I walked into the hospital lobby, which was crowded with people, registering, getting 4 drips, walking around. Everyone was busy. I grabbed any medical staff I could find and asked where the bus driver from the accident was. The medical staff were busy, quickly giving me information before moving on. I asked my way around and finally found the emergency room door. Just then, the doctor pushed out a gurney with someone covered in a white sheet. The doctor saw my tear-streaked face, paused, and said, "We did everything we could. Please accept our condolences." I couldn't accept this sudden turn of events. Just that afternoon, my father had said he had time off this weekend, and our family could go on a picnic. Why, in just 3 short hours, was he lying motionless on a bed? The severe blow made me lose control. I rushed forward, pulled back the white sheet, wanting him to wake up. The moment I pulled back the sheet, I realized it wasn't my dad. I quickly stood up, covered the person with the sheet again, bowed 3 times, and apologized. Then I asked the doctor, "Isn't the person from the bus accident here?" The doctor said, "We brought in 4 patients. One has been revived and is in the intensive care unit, named Henry E. The other 2 are on the 3rd floor. My last name is Yu." So I rushed to the 3rd floor. The lights were still on in both emergency rooms. I paced back and forth restlessly. Time seemed to slow down infinitely at that moment. It felt like I waited for a century before the light in one of the emergency rooms went out. I hurried to meet them, but when I saw that the person was also covered with a white sheet, I froze. I didn't dare go any closer, backing away slowly. The doctor looked at me, unsure whether to say those words. After a moment of hesitation, the light in the adjacent emergency room also went out. But I still didn't dare turn around. 2 people had died in a row. I didn't dare to look. It wasn't until the doctor pushed the person past me that I caught a glimpse of my father's face. I felt a wave of relief. I collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Later, I learned from my father that it was precisely the 2 heroes who died in the rescue that saved his life and the lives of everyone on the bus. It was during the evening rush hour, and the bus was packed. A passenger got into an argument with my father and started getting physical. People around them tried to intervene, but he became even more aggressive, pulling out a newly purchased fruit knife and waving it around. In the chaos, my father was stabbed in the waist. He held down the horn, intending to stop the bus when traffic conditions allowed. But the agitated passenger started grabbing the steering wheel. He yanked the wheel, sending the bus careening into the oncoming lane and crashing into the guardrail. Beyond the guardrail was the Yushi River, the largest river in the city. If the bus went over, everyone on board would be in danger. Just at that critical moment, a small car, traveling even faster, crashed into the bus. The powerful impact stopped the bus at the edge of the guardrail, but the small car plunged straight into the river. Someone on the bus had called the police the moment the argument started. Not long after the car fell into the river, the rescue team and ambulances arrived. But the 2 people in the car were severely injured from the collision with the bus, and when they were pulled out, their lives were hanging by a thread. Despite the rescue team's prompt arrival, they were ultimately unable to save them. I met Ethan at the funeral of those 2 lifesavers. He was 20 years old that year, in the prime of his life, but he was incredibly somber. His hands were clenched at his sides, his lips pressed tightly into a straight line. I was a little afraid of him at the time, but his parents had saved my father's life. After my mother and I offered flowers, I bowed to him quickly and left. Later, I would occasionally see him by the Yushi River. I would be on the bus and he would be standing on the sidewalk by the bridge, sometimes gazing at the river, sometimes looking at the newly repaired guardrail. Occasionally, he would stare blankly at the passing buses. He was in a very bad state. And so, he was outside the bus and I was inside. Without him knowing, we had seen each other hundreds of times. After I got into university, I don't know what possessed me, but I resolutely chose to study psychology. His parents were dead, and even a miracle worker couldn't bring them back. But I studied psychology, hoping that after I graduated, I could heal him. After graduating from university, I interned at his company. His temper had become even worse, unpredictable, ready to explode at any moment. He would drive away 3 to 5 secretaries a month. Only I persevered, gradually working my way up to the position of chief secretary. Under my subtle guidance, his condition gradually improved. At that time, his long-distance relationship with the white moonlight, Ava, had also reached 10 years. They had been secretly together since high school, in love for many years, with many ups and downs, and had reached the age of marriage. I originally thought that Ethan's condition would improve after marriage as he really loved Ava. But unexpectedly, it was at this time that Ava exacerbated Ethan's illness. It was a simple matter. Ethan was preparing to propose to Ava when he accidentally saw her flirting with a male colleague. Honestly, it wasn't Ava's fault. The male colleague was Ava's direct supervisor, and Ava couldn't afford to offend him, so she had to smile and play along. But Ethan had been a rich second-generation kid since childhood, so he couldn't understand. In his world, if you don't like someone, you reject them. Not rejecting them is playing hard to get. So in his eyes, that scene looked like they were flirting. He went up and beat the man up, then dragged Ava away. After speeding off, they argued in the car, and the car crashed into the roadside, but thankfully stopped. He questioned Ava, asking why she betrayed him. Why was she leaving him too? His hand was raised high, his expression pained and struggling. Finally, it passed over Ava's shoulder and slammed into the car. This scene was also recorded by a passerby who filmed the car accident. After his parents died, Ethan became extremely insecure. I could actually understand. Anyone whose family was originally happy and loving, with doting parents, and then suddenly lost both parents, with the company's responsibilities, falling entirely on their 20-year-old shoulders, would have a hard time staying mentally healthy under the dual pressure of mental and emotional exhaustion. When I was 17, I saw 2 people come out covered in white sheets one after the other, and I almost broke down. I could never forget that feeling. Although I got my father back afterward, I became overly cautious and anxious from then on. But Ethan, after seeing his father die, he immediately saw his mother die. Under the double blow, I couldn't imagine the mental pressure he was under. Such a person could explode under the slightest stimulation, which is what outsiders saw as his mood swings. Because I had almost experienced it myself, I could understand him. Ava was the most important person in his heart, and when he faced her, his emotional outbursts were like a volcanic eruption. After that day, I privately went to Ava to plead for him, revealing my reasons for joining Ethan's company and repeatedly assuring her that I would cure Ethan. Ava looked at me silently for a while and finally gave Ethan another chance. After that, I tried even harder to treat and guide Ethan. I even secretly used medication to help. He often stayed up late and had some minor health problems. I would occasionally buy him some health supplements and easily replaced them with mood-stabilizing drugs, giving them to him. But things still got out of control. Not long after, Ethan again saw Ava with the male colleague. This time, he restrained himself and didn't start a fight in the street, but he turned around and locked Ava up at home. When I received Ava's SOS signal, I was almost driven mad. Kidnapping. Restricting someone's personal freedom. How badly did Ethan want to go to jail? Luckily, I found out in time. Ava was confined for less than 24 hours, so it didn't constitute illegal imprisonment. Ethan was detained for 15 days. After that, Ava refused to see him, seemingly determined to cut off all contact. This time, I was powerless. I realized I didn't have complete confidence in curing Ethan, nor did I have complete confidence in Ava staying with such a broken Ethan for the rest of her life. I chose silence. But fate brought them back together. Ava went on a business trip to a remote area, encountered a blizzard, and was trapped in the mountains. Ethan heard the news and went into the mountains alone to rescue her. In moments of crisis, the mind isn't always rational. Ethan, that idiot, didn't call the rescue team, nor did he bring any emergency supplies. When I finally found them with the rescue team, the 2 idiots were trembling and hugging each other for warmth. I seriously suspected Ethan did it on purpose, but I had no proof. After this incident, they naturally got back together and quickly reached the point of marriage. After all, Ava was 29, and in a few months, she would cross the threshold of 30 and become what the neighbors called an old maid. She wasn't in a hurry, but her parents were. In their haste, they decided to hold the wedding before even getting the marriage license. But, as I mentioned at the beginning, Ava stood at the wedding venue but unexpectedly calmed down. She thought about Ethan's illness, about how most of their past arguments were due to Ethan's uncontrollable temper, and she imagined their future life. Reality outweighed the remnants of their battered relationship. She ultimately chose to be pragmatic, clear-headed, and decisively ran away from the wedding. And I, unable to bear seeing Ethan so humiliated, volunteered to step in. Because I knew that, apart from Ava, he would never love anyone else. His heart was sealed shut when he was 20, and no one had been able to enter it since. So I went. What I've never mentioned is that, many years ago, I fell in love with Ethan. Ever since I rode the bus and passed him by, my heart had fluttered. But I knew he had a girlfriend, so I always hid and restrained my feelings. But that day, the bride ran away, and the groom was embarrassed and humiliated. In such a crisis, if I didn't take advantage of the situation and win him over, when would I? And so, I successfully became Mrs. Carter. However, even though I was legally Mrs. Carter and genuinely loved Ethan, it didn't mean he could rape me against my will. Those were two different things. Before we got married, we had made it clear that it was just a fake marriage, and we couldn't do anything against the other's will if they refused. He had committed a crime. That morning when I woke up, I was furious, and I really intended to report him. But his gentle and guilty demeanor softened my heart. His parents had saved my father, and I loved him. The two emotions intertwined, extinguishing my anger. However, some time later, Ethan abused me a second time. This was actually within my expectations. Humans are creatures like that. If the consequences of something aren't deeply ingrained, it's hard to realize that it's absolutely off limits. My first forgiveness sent him the message that this wasn't absolutely forbidden. At the same time, he proposed that every time he abused me, he would compensate me with $75,000. I initially refused. It made me feel like I was engaging in a sex trade. But he offered so much. I looked at the string of zeros on my bank card and decided to sacrifice myself. I became the progress bar for his condition. After the second incident, I enlisted Ava's help, agreeing on irregular stimulations of Ethan. Of course, it was a paid service. The frequency of Ethan's anger showed the progress of his recovery from his manic disorder. Gradually, he was getting better. But I was going crazy. I had agreed with Ava to give her $3,000 a month for her to periodically trigger Ethan 3 times a month. Now Ethan could control his emotions. For 3 consecutive months, he hadn't touched me. I was receiving a base salary of $15,000, spending $3,000 a month, effectively losing tens of thousands of dollars without even a peep. I felt like I was losing out. Boo-hoo. Okay, recap over. Let's return to the present moment. Quick recap. I fried a plate of peanuts, set a table full of wine, and tried to get Ethan drunk. Just then, Ava called and said, "Ethan, I'm getting married next month. Will you come?" Of course, through the recap, you should be able to guess that Ava's words were a lie. Ava was incredibly picky. Her mother arranged 3 blind dates for her a day, and she hadn't liked a single one. Inviting Ethan to the wedding was, of course, my instruction. This was the final test. If, under the stimulation of this news, and with me plying Ethan with alcohol, he could still maintain his composure, then his illness would be considered cured. I played my part to the end, looking at Ethan, smiling and shaking the bottle of wine, asking, "Is drinking still bad for your health?" Ethan didn't speak, sat down on the sofa, opened a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses, and handed me one. "Drink." After a few rounds, we were both drunk. But Ethan still hadn't made a move. I kept provoking him, my eyes gleaming with the thought of $75,000. But Ethan probably sensed it and didn't touch me. And tonight, he was unusually calm. So I switched to seduction mode, but he was like Lu Xiaohui incarnate, completely unmoved. Damn it. I felt my figure had been insulted. I climbed onto his lap in a rage. "Ethan, are you impotent? Or are you so broke you can't even afford $75,000 anymore?" Ethan looked at me, shaking his head in the darkness. No. Then why aren't you touching me? I pressed closer. Ethan's features were magnified before my eyes. I saw him swallow, and then he tentatively leaned closer to me. Seeing that I didn't dodge, he came closer and lightly kissed my lips. Huh. I laughed triumphantly. Ethan, a kiss for $1,500. That's not too much, is it? Ethan. He was getting angry. His face darkened. He pulled me off his lap and went straight back to the bedroom. I hurried after him. But as soon as he entered the room, he slammed the door shut. Bang. I was left facing a cold, hard wall. This meant his illness was truly cured. I stood in the living room for a long time. Seeing that Ethan had no intention of opening the door for me, I tugged at the corners of my mouth, turned around, took out my phone, and called Ava. Thinking about what I was about to say, my heart suddenly ached for no reason. He's a normal person now, I said, calming my emotions and telling her firmly. You don't have to worry about him losing control and doing something dangerous to you. After hanging up the phone, I already had the answer in my heart. Ava hadn't found a new love after all this time, and she was willing to help me provoke him. She must still have feelings for him. Her only resistance to Ethan was his manic disorder. Now that he was cured, there were no obstacles between them. Thinking of this, I felt a little sad. I had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, lost my first, second, third, fourth, fifth times, only to pave the way for someone else. It was too difficult. Fortunately, Ethan was a fool with money, and I had secretly transferred a lot out of the supplementary card. Thinking of this, I felt better. Early the next morning, I went home and looked at houses at a sales office. For bedrooms, 2 living rooms, a river view. My parents were very satisfied. My father, looking at the magnificent river view outside the window, trembled slightly. This must cost hundreds of thousands, right? I nodded. The down payment is $120,000. My father almost fell to his knees. How much? The down payment is $120,000. My dad reached out to my mom. Wife, help me up, my legs are weak. My mom, don't help me, my legs are weak too. So the 2 elders leaned against the wall, calming down for a while before asking me, honey, be honest, are you doing something shady? Or have you broken the law? I said, I'm a psychology graduate. My dad thought for a moment and asked, are you involved in fraud or a pyramid scheme? I wanted to argue, but when I thought about it, I seemed to have done it all. Colluding with Ava to provoke Ethan, that was fraud. Brainwashing Ethan, instilling correct thoughts, that was a pyramid scheme. Sleeping with Ethan, that was a sex trade. And all 3 of those were against the law. I realized belatedly that after Ava confessed to Ethan, if he decided to pursue it, I could go to jail. Help. I quickly called the salesperson. Little Chin, can I get a refund on this house? Little Chin, huh? What did you say? The signal isn't very good here. Then, click, the phone hung up. I looked at the river outside the balcony, wanting to cry but having no tears. I canceled my phone number and dragged my parents away overnight, fleeing to S City. When I was a child, my biggest dream was to come to S City and see the sea. My parents didn't have the time or the money, and later, when I grew up and got a job and had money, I never came because of Ethan. Now my dream had finally come true. Sunshine, beach, verdant coconut trees. My parents walked side by side, stepping on the waves. Life was peaceful, and even the wind was gentle. Lily, you. Just as I was immersed in the sea breeze and sunset, a voice I least wanted to hear at that moment appeared behind me. I quickly covered my face with my hat. He can't see me. He can't see me. Snap. The hat was lifted. Ethan and I stared at each other, wide-eyed. After a moment, I chuckled dryly. What a coincidence. Not a coincidence, Ethan said. I came looking for you. Let me explain. Ethan sat down next to me. Go ahead. I really wanted to run away. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Ethan sighed after a moment, leaned over, brushed the hair that had blown in front of my eyes, and got close to me. Lily, I love you. What? I sprang up from the beach chair, frowning at him. Are you crazy? Ethan. Afterward, Ethan told me. He really did fall in love with me, and he didn't even know when it started. Maybe it was when I was carefree, but made him hangover soup and carefully wiped his body after his business dinners. Maybe it was when I got drunk and cuddled with him, acting spoiled. Maybe it was when I didn't abandon him when he had his episodes. Anyway, there were many moments, he said, when I made his heart flutter. He said my embrace was warm, that he could completely relax in front of me, show all his vulnerability, weakness, and bad temper. We didn't need to pretend, we were intimate. So he started consciously controlling his emotions during his episodes. He didn't want to hurt me. He tried to slowly get closer to me, win my affection. But I seemed to be very dull, incredibly slow, and didn't feel it at all. He wanted to be bolder, but he was afraid I would be scared and run away. So he carefully tested the waters little by little. However, while he was testing the waters, he suddenly discovered that I had disappeared. Just as he was frantically searching for me, Ava found him and told him everything I had done for him over the years, telling him not to let me down. After hearing all this, I understood. It was all Ava's doing. Why didn't she follow the script? Why did she do this to me so unexpectedly? I immediately took out my phone, angrily found Ava's number, and asked her why. On the other end of the phone, Ava's voice was innocent. Ethan is a good person, and so are you. You two should be together. I'm more practical, weighing the pros and cons of everything. So he and I, maybe we're not that suitable. Besides, she said, a missed opportunity is a missed opportunity. There's no such thing as you planting the tree and me enjoying the shade. I had to say, I was a fan of Ava. Such a righteous outlook. I loved it. I wanted to kick Ethan to the curb and be with Ava. What are you thinking? Just as I was coveting Ava, Ethan pulled my head back, his jealousy overflowing. I reluctantly messaged Ava again. Sister, are you free tonight? Can I treat you to dinner? Ava, yes. I immediately grinned from ear to ear. Then I'll pick you up tonight. Ava, aren't you going to spend time with Ethan? I glanced at Ethan. Ethan said he has to work overtime at the company. I shouldn't have looked. Ethan felt my gaze, came over, and saw our conversation. Ethan stared at me intently. I do have to work overtime today. I put my phone behind my back. Haha, is that so? Ethan chuckled coldly, pointedly. But you won't have time either. There's a pervert. Help. The end.